Hello, I'm Lena Kronenbürger. I'm a freelance journalist and moderator based in Munich, Germany, and I'm part of New Europeans since 2016. Today, I'm going to talk to Roger Casale, the founder of New Europeans, and we're going to talk about the latest events in Europe. Hi, Roger. Good to
Hi,
see you.
Lena. Great to see you. I hope you're keeping safe and well. I hope all our viewers are keeping safe and well.
Yes, thank you. So, Roger, whenever I talk to you on the phone, I learn so much because you always give me an overview about the political events in Europe, in the world. So I thought I don't want to be selfish. We should share this with the world. So I was wondering, maybe you can tell me a bit about what has happened last week and maybe, yeah, what's your pick of the week?
Thank you very much. That's a very nice thing of you to say. But if I have something good to say to you on the phone, that's only because I've been speaking to lots of other members and activists from New Europeans all over the world who've been telling me stories and pointing things out. And we said safe and well. Obviously, COVID is still a big story for everybody. We're all in this still for a long time to come, and hope people are not feeling too down about it. But one thing that's happened to cheer us up a little bit has been the election in America, which of course is also still taking all of the oxygen, all of the news time. And of course, you might have missed, I don't know whether you saw Joe Biden, who's just gently getting on with preparing to move into the White House. And he had a meeting with Nancy Pelosi, and he said, he tried to speak Spanish. You know, last week he was saying he was Irish, this week he was speaking a little bit of Spanish. He said, mi casa is your casa. I don't think I said it right either, but it doesn't matter. It sounded great. I think that's a very nice approach. It's like the old communists used to say, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. I don't think that's what he meant. I think he was wanting to be very open and have a new style of government. But of course, he can't move in because the old incumbent is still there. And it's getting more and more embarrassing. I was encouraged because there was a general who said that in America, who said that the oath that the generals swear from the army in America is not to Donald Trump, it's to the US Constitution, and that's what they will respect. So that's encouraging. But I think he is still behaving like a kind of little boy in shorts who didn't get to have his party. You know, he wanted to have a party, he wanted to have a good time. We all want to have a good time. We don't mind him having a good time. You know, he doesn't have to go home. He just has to leave the White House. You know, it doesn't matter where he goes. He just has to move out. I think he's worried about so many things. But what we should be worried about is not just Donald Trump, but also his supporters. And you know, we laugh at them and some of the things that they say. I don't know whether you saw that piece where one of the Donald Trump supporters was explaining to a journalist about how they wanted to stop the counting the votes in states where Trump had won and continue stop counting the votes in states where it looked like Trump was going to lose, and keep counting them in the states where he was going to win. And they were asked if this was fair, and they said, no, it's not biased. What's biased is the liberal media. And then the companion of the person who was speaking to the journalist said, yeah, you know, you think we're stupid. We're not stupid. You know, Donald Trump is a genius. That's what the J stands for, genius. But actually, the J stands for Janus. It stands for two-faced. It stands for being able to say one thing to one group of people and something else to another group of people. Trump is defeated, but Trumpism hasn't gone away. And I think there are many lessons for us to learn in Europe. I was delighted to see Ruth Vodak's article already, one of the members of New Europeans from Austria, who of course you interviewed, talking about the lessons for Europe from what we see with the far right and populism in the United States. I think there are many lessons to learn. In 2 years' time, we have elections in France for Macron and in Hungary for Orban. And that is going to look a little bit like what we've just seen in the United States, I think. And it's very important to understand what we need to do to beat the populists, to beat the right-wing extremists, and to learn from the success of the Biden campaign.
So if we now turn to Europe, what kind of other geniuses do we look at there?
Well, we haven't got. We've got little geniuses in Europe in the form of little Victor in Budapest and little Mateusz in Poland. I mean, Poland is a big country. Hungary is rather small, but together they are able to create a lot of problems. But of course, both little Matthew, as I call him, the Polish Prime Minister, and little Victor in Budapest, they're both on the naughty step this week. And Angela Merkel, who is, of course, otherwise known as the Mutti of Germany, and for me is the Mutti of Europe, she's the one who holds the sweetie jar with the European Recovery Programme. Ultimately, it is very important what Germany thinks. And I think she still wants to give some sweeties to all the children of Europe, including little Victor and little Mateusz. But at the moment, the lid is firmly screwed on. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, he was more colourful in his language. He said that you can't just come along here and stub out the Corona cigar. He said, coronavirus cigar, and open your mouth and hope that the fried chicken will fly in. I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me, but it sounds pretty strong language. I think we need to remember that there are many fine people in Poland and Hungary. And if you look at history, you think about Poland, you think about the Warsaw Ghetto, you think about the resistance to Nazism in Poland, you think about Lech Walesa, you think about solidarity. All through history, we mustn't judge the whole of Poland by the actions of little Matthew. We mustn't judge the whole of Hungary by the actions of little Victor. There are wonderful people, also New Europeans, who are working for freedom and democracy and human rights, and many civil society organizations. The Stefan Batory Foundation in Poland is one of them. Eszter Nagy in Hungary is an activist who's doing great work. So change can come from within, but if you're part of the European Union, it's not just a question of obeying the rules, it's a question of being European. And obeying the rule of law it shouldn't be too much to ask. What is the problem that little Victor and little Matthew have?
Yeah.
Having to obey the rule of law.
Yeah. What is it that Poland and Hungary have against the rule of law? Could you maybe specify?
Well, I think that if you are a right-wing authoritarian ruler, the last thing you want to have to bother with is human rights and the rule of law and democracy. And Orban is very carefully dismantling democracy in Hungary. I think in Poland, it's more complicated. I think they want to they want to engage in a certain style of politics that plays to the far right in Poland, because they need those votes to maintain their parliamentary democracy. But the rule of law is the rule of law, and Europe is a community of values, not just a community of interests. And those values include respect for the rule of law and democracy and human rights. And we see some terrible things happening in Poland, but we also see great protests and great mobilization. And a friend of mine called Marta Lempart, who's also involved with New Europeans, she's one of the leaders of the Polish women's strike. And she always tells the story about what she and the women who campaign with her say when the police turn up, and they say, "Attention, attention, we are the police." And Martha and her friends shout back, "Attention, attention, we are the citizens." And we need to do that across Europe. We need to support Marta and Esther and people like them who are fighting for freedom and democracy and the rule of law in Poland and Hungary. And together we can get the better of little Victor and little Matthew in the end, and create a Poland that is really can be proudly European again, just as it has been many times in the past. And I'm sure there are many Polish people who want that. I don't see that as an attack on sovereignty. I see it as an expression of European values. And if we don't uphold those European values and the rule of law in Poland, we can't speak of a Europe that respects the rule of law. So what happens in Poland affects you and me. And this is a really big moment for the European Union to show that it can stand up for its values and what it means to be a European.
Mm-hmm. Roger, when I met you for the first time and I became a member of New Europeans, this was the year of the Brexit referendum. And you said in the beginning, COVID-19, this is still one of the main topics at the moment, of course. What do you think, to what extent does Brexit compound the health situation in the moment?
It's very bad. I think politically it gives the opportunity to the Conservative government in Britain to blame the economic fallout from Brexit on COVID, which they will try to do. Of course, the impact of COVID is very serious on the economy, but it's also Brexit that is going to create a recession, is creating a recession in the UK. And when my Italian friends, I'm based in Italy now, when my Italian friends say to me, what is happening in Britain? What is Boris Johnson doing? And I say, you have to imagine that he's sort of like in a submarine going down to the bottom of the sea. Francis Mitterrand, the French president, used to say that things wouldn't start to get better until they reach the bottom. So it looks to me as if Boris Johnson and his crew are heading down to the bottom of the sea. And my Italian friend said, well, let's hope that when he gets to the bottom of the seabed, he's not going to get out and start digging. And probably they will. I hope that there is an extension to the transition period. I think there has to be now. I mean, it's ridiculous. They can blame everything on COVID. They could even blame the breakdown of negotiations on COVID, because they managed to get a situation where one or two of the trade negotiators are now ill with COVID. And of course, I wish them well. I hope they get well soon. But it's another example of how everything breaks down because of COVID. We need to have an extension. But economic recession, it is an economic price, but there's also a price in terms of our health. And there's a great article in The Independent this week, Lena, by a friend of New Europeans called David Keyes, who helped us a lot with the vote denied inquiry that we called for last year after the scandal of people not being able to vote in the European elections. And he's had a really detailed look over past recessions, going back hundreds of years, to show what the impact is of an economic recession on people's physical, emotional, psychological health, on family breakups, on trauma in children, on domestic violence. I mean, all of the kind of indices that you would want to go down tend to go up during a recession. And so we've not just got COVID, we've also got the disease of Brexititis. One might call it Brexititis, a kind of double whammy, not just COVID, but Brexititis as well. And both of these things will have a cumulative effect on the economy. And that negative effect on the economy is already having an effect on people's health. And we know that because we can see it happening around us. But we also know it thanks to David Keyes from the detailed research he's done about the health impact of previous recessions. And I very much recommend people to just Google David Keyes, K-E-Y-S, Independent, and read his article about the impact of recessions on people's health.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, when we look at this Brexititis, how you call it, what about the European Health Union, the idea behind it? Do you think this could be something that would help in this case?
Well, I phoned up some of our members this week. You were saying about the phone calls we have, and I said to them, I know why you're happy this week. Because the health commissioner, Stella Kyriakides, it's a wonderful name. It takes a little bit of time to get it tripping off the tongue, but it does. Stella Kyriakides. Well done, Stella Kyriakides, the health commissioner. She has not only come up with a plan for a European health union, which, as you rightly say, Europeans has been campaigning for ever since the pandemic broke out, and we launched an important policy paper on Europe Day, 9th of May, and I think the key thing to say is that we've been working with other groups and with other citizens. It's not just us, the Economic and Social Committee, Citizens Take Over Europe, European Civic Forum, Europe People's Forum, Europe Future Fringe, all the different networks and organizations that we're involved in. And this is a genuine effort for the citizens to say to the European institutions, next time there's a pandemic, we want you to be ready for it. And the things that you need to do that are going to help you to be more ready. We don't want to see all the borders closing straight away. We want to see you coordinating better, so that, as eventually happened, if there's spare capacity in Baden-Württemberg and we've got some ill people in Strasbourg, bring them across the Rhine and put them in hospital in Germany. Don't close the borders so that we can't treat them, because we're all in this together. And I think this has been heard, just like earlier in the year, the call for solidarity with Italy, for example, that had been particularly affected first by COVID, was heard. The call for a European health union from citizens, it came from citizens, it's been heard. And in fact, in her press conference on the 11th of November, Stella Kyriakides, the health commissioner, Stella Kyriakides, known to Stella as her friends, she actually said, we have listened to the citizens and this is what we want to do. And so I phoned around Giovanni Brauzzi, who in Rome, who put together this proposal in the first place, and Paul Henningsen in Denmark, and Charlotte Gath in England, and others who've been working with us on this. And I said, you know, Stella says she's listened to the citizens, and now we're going to have a European health union. What do you think about that? And we're quite impressed. We're quite encouraged. There's still a huge amount to be done to transform it into a reality. And I think there's also the aspect that we need change in other areas like border control, education, and so on. But this is a very good example of how the institutions really are listening to the citizens, and we're very encouraged, having done all this work, to see that there is change, that there is a lot of what we said in the proposals, and that conversation can go forward and really make a difference to people's lives, we believe. So really our message to citizens is get involved, join the Europeans or join another pro-European organization. Just get out there and do something. Say what it is that you want, say what it is that you can contribute, what you can do for your health and the health of others. Make a difference, because we're all in this together. And it does make a difference, and people are listening, and we can change Europe together.
Yes, thank you for emphasizing this. And I agree. I think we need a coordinated strategy, and we need, pooling the resources in Europe for sure. Yeah. Roger, there was something else happening, because I saw a wonderful conference about Belarus, and maybe you can tell us more about.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking about what's happening in America at the start of this show. And what we see in America is that democracy matters. You know, democracy really matters, and it matters there, and it matters in Belarus, and it matters everywhere in the world. And if in America, Black people and people of color, women in particular, hadn't turned up and really voted for Joe Biden, we'd still be left with Donald Trump. So you have a democracy there, and people try to suppress the vote. They try and stop people voting because they don't want the kind of change that we need. And the only way to change that is through democracy, is to go out and vote. And that's what people want to do in Belarus, especially the women. It's incredible the way in which women have mobilized. And we have a member there called Olga, who is she would describe herself as an ordinary working woman with a young family. Nothing ordinary about her at all. She's become an extraordinary individual, like all of her friends and neighbors who go out every Sunday to campaign, to protest. They don't know when they come home, whether they will come home on Sunday. They take it, Olga takes in her handbag the items that she might need if she was arrested and put in prison without charge. She has to have that in her. That's scary. That's chilling. Yeah. And part of the reason they do it is because they also want to, they're standing up for their rights, and they know that they have a voice, and that's absolutely right. But they also want to protect their menfolk, their sons, their brothers, because the way in which the police brutality, also towards women, but of course, especially towards men, and just in a frenzied way by the police in mass numbers. And one young man who was murdered by the police last week. So it's very, very frightening. But what Olga says to me actually is, when I speak to her on the phone, she says, you know, all the time they talk about us as the opposition. We're not the opposition, we're the majority. And they are the majority. They just want their rights. They just want to be able to live in a free society. And that means a society where you have democracy, not fraudulent elections and dictators. And I think it's inspirational, the courage that Olga and others like her have to really stand up for that. And that is the only way forward. You know, we don't live in a time where things are decided by rolling the dice or by, you know, listening to what religious leaders tell us. We live in a time where big decisions are made by governments who we elect. And if you want to change something, you as a citizen have to take that power in your hand. And I think if Olga can go out there with, you know, carefully putting into her handbag as she leaves the front door on a Sunday, the things she might need if she's arrested and put in prison simply for standing up for her rights, then I'm sure that in the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, there's something we can do for Europe. There's something we can do when the time comes to stand up for our rights too. So I think she's a great inspiration.
Yeah, thank you, Roger, so much for this overview.
Thank you.
Yeah, for your time, and see you very soon.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Take
Bye,
care.
Roger.
Thanks a lot. Bye.